This is confusing because you changed a verb into a noun. The verb dispense is used as a noun, the dispensation of. It's much clearer to say, the president will decide whether the company will pay for your outside courses. So, number 2 on the hit list, don't change verbs into nouns.
Okay, I knew that. What else?
Well, all right then. Next you wrote, before returning your timesheets, please make sure they have been authorized by your supervisor after you've had them initialed by your group leader. Now, these instructions are accurate, but they're confusing, don't you think?
It is awkward, but I don't know why.
It's the order. It's unnatural. You should have written, timesheets must be initialed by your group leader before your supervisor will authorize them. Rule number 3, write instructions in their natural order.
Okay, great. Thanks a lot. That's good advice, but I have an appointment to keep, and...
Sit down, Roberts. We're just getting started. This last line here, about the coffee pot. Now, how do you expect anyone to act on a sentence like that? Look at this thing. The coffee pot must be washed at least 3 times a week. Come on, Roberts. Use the active voice. Demand action. Listen. Please make sure that you wash the coffee pot every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. This clearly states what must be done and when. Rule number 4, use the active voice. That way, people know what's expected of them. Now, Mr. Roberts, you've managed to break 4 rules from the Clear Writers hit list in just 1 memo. Surely there must be some kind of a record there. Let's look at some more of your work. The normal working day begins at 9 o'clock and ends at 5 o'clock. There are 2 coffee breaks lasting 15 minutes each, one at 10:15, the other at 3:15. Lunch periods are 60 minutes and begin at noon. Now, Mr. Roberts, does this make any sense to you?
Well, sure it does. Start work at 9, coffee break at 10:15, lunch at 12 noon, another break at 3:15, and at 5, we're finished.
Precisely. So why not present it that way? Look at this. Don't write sentences unnecessarily.
Yeah, I see what you mean.
So, rule number 5. Write sentences only when it makes sense to do so. By using the Clear Writers hit list, you'll become a more effective writer and a better manager.
You know, I hate to admit it, but I don't always get the results I want. Last month, I sent out a memo inviting all employees to the company golf tournament. I thought I would get 100, 120 replies, but out of 180 employees, 8 responded by the due date.
We saw that memo, and to be honest with you, we're surprised you had any response at all. All critical points of fact were buried under too much text. All employees are requested to return the enclosed reply cards by the due date indicated, stating their interests in a company golf tournament on June 17. The tournament will be held at the Horseshoe Valley Golf Club and should be an ideal morale booster for the entire organization. The company will cover half the cost of golfing, and really, Mr. Roberts, what's important here?
Well, we need to announce the tournament, when and where it's held, the cost, and the schedule.
Exactly. And this is what it should look like.
Yeah, I see. I see.
List critical points apart from the text. Rule number 6. Let's go on. The next point can be a little tricky. We found this example in your company newsletter. Employees made the following suggestions to the employee suggestion box. Redesign the paint line, move the water cooler to the employee lounge. Let's have the Christmas party at the Holiday Inn. These suggestions are written correctly if each is used on its own. But here they're confusing because each point uses a different form. The article would be easier to read if you used the same form for each point. Let me show you. Employees made the following suggestions last month. Redesign the paint line, move the water cooler to the employee lounge, hold the Christmas party at the Holiday Inn. Rule number 7. Use the same form for each point. Do you understand, Mr. Roberts?
I'm with you. Write sentences only when it makes sense to do so. List critical points apart from the text. List items in the same form.
Well, Mr. Roberts, I think you're beginning to get the picture.
I remember Bobby. We went to school together, kindergarten, in fact. And I remember one time for show and tell, we were walking to school together, and I think I was taking my turtle, and he was taking this 100-page report that he'd written about his summer vacation. Things went from bad to worse. We were in business school together, and the teachers would get so confused by the reports he had written. And then our first job, we ended up in the same company together. And it was around the time that those little Post-it notes came out, and we all thought they were so handy. Bob thought they were too small. He wanted legal-size Post-it notes. There wasn't enough room to write things on, he said.
Right. Enough already. Can we get on with this?
All right, let's get on with it. We've noticed that you have a bit of a negative tendency, Mr. Roberts, and here it is in your writing. Do not place mileage expense forms in the travel expense file. Why so negative, Roberts? Why not place mileage expense forms in the mileage expense file? It's much better to tell people what you want them to do rather than what not to do. It's that simple. Nobody likes a negative attitude. So, rule number 8, use a positive tone whenever possible.
Yeah, okay. You're right.
And then there's this little matter of rambling jargon. Now, you're earning quite a reputation here, Mr. Roberts.
Yeah. Oh, hi. Saw it. I just passed it out to the crew for him. How do I know? Maybe he's trying to impress someone. I have to explain the stuff to my people all the time, but I'm never sure. I'm not sure he totally understands what he's writing.
Why do people insist on using difficult words unnecessarily? Why? You once wrote, "Strict and vigilant compliance with the aforementioned directives will ensure the continued safety of all concerned," when you meant, "Please follow these instructions carefully for your safety and your co-workers' safety. Get to the point. Write efficiently." Rule number 9, avoid using jargon. Now, don't get me wrong, Mr. Roberts. There are times when it's necessary to use a few extra words to get your point across clearly. Take this memo written for the shipping department. You wrote, "Make sure the grapple snappets are securely flanged." Now, what are grapple snappets anyway? And how do you flange them?
Grapple snappets are lids for a cardboard box, and flanging is a special process we've developed for sealing them.
There, you see? Now, why couldn't you just do that in your memo? If you have to use a difficult word, explain it in ways people can understand. Let me show you.
No, allow me. Make sure the lids, also called grapple snappets, are securely sealed with the flanging machine. Rule number 10, explain difficult words in their context.
Impressive. Very impressive, Roberts. That'll do it. You've come a long way in a short time. 10 simple points that will not only benefit you, but also those who read what you write. I'm late for my next appointment. Will you be all right?
Oh, fine. I'll find my way to my own office. Thanks.
Don't mention it. I hope our next meeting will be under more pleasant circumstances.
The Clear Writer's Hit List. Write directly to your reader. Avoid the third person. Don't change verbs into nouns. Write instructions in their natural order. Use the active voice. Write sentences when it makes sense to do so. List critical points apart from the text. List items in the same form. Use a positive tone wherever possible. Avoid using jargon. And finally, explain difficult words in their context.
So you can see the the hairstyles are so up to date and everything. But the points that they were making stand as true today as they did 20 years ago when the video was created. So there's still good guidelines to keep in mind when you're creating a document. Okay. Find my place again. So, a couple things that you want to keep in mind when you're writing things. Our focus in this presentation, since we only had an hour, and quite often a full clear writing workshop can take up to 3 hours. So we want you to just really focus on keeping in mind who is your audience for your message. So writing the way you speak is a really good way to communicate in written form, so that people understand and you can engage your audience a bit better. Now, there are times, for example, when you're working with your funder, that they expect a certain language, and that's completely understandable. But remember who your audience is. Writing to your funder, writing to your coworker, and writing for your learners and the general public are 3 very different audiences, and you do want to keep that in mind. So, in your folder, we've got a blue sheet, and there's one page that has 2 examples on it that we've taken from contracts and an insurance document. And we just want to highlight some of the simple ways that you can take the legalese, technical mumbo jumbo and distill it down into something that's easy to understand. So any person attempting to avoid full payment of telecommunication services by any method, scheme, or device is in violation of the law. Persons committing such theft are liable for heavy fines or imprisonment. Write the way you talk. It's illegal to avoid paying phone charges. You'll be fined or jailed if you're caught. So it's simple, it's to the point, and everybody's going to understand that. And then the other one, I'm not going to bother read because it's just way too long, and it's not going to help having it read out loud. So you can see how it explains some of the terms, and it's in much clearer language. It's easy to understand. So someone who's perhaps getting closer to retirement and who wants to take a look at this policy to see exactly where they stand with their group benefits is going to be able to understand that. So think of the factory worker or a sales clerk or someone who is in a position where they've got group benefits, getting to the point where it matters, and this is the first time they're looking at it. So having it easy to understand is going to be a whole lot less hassle for everyone involved. Because, you know, somebody is going to have to explain this stuff to them anyway, so it might as well be there for them to read themselves. So you want to write to your reader, not over your reader. The purpose of writing isn't always to make yourself sound more important than the person that you're writing to, because that's a real barrier to communication right there, saying, well, I'm better than you and I'm going to write this way to prove it. You want to avoid that so you can engage your audience and have the communication working the way you need it to.
Also put the important information up at the top. I mean, we all know that we read the first part of a document and we kind of skim the rest, and by the time we get to the end we kind of go, I think I got it. Put it at the front, right at the beginning. Everybody's going to know then what's important. You know, use sentences only if you need to. It also depends on who, you know, what the topic is and who your reader is. But as long as you focus on who your reader is, they're like you. They don't have a lot of time, you know. They just want to get the information and move on. Use shorter words and sentences and paragraphs. Less acronyms. You know, explain that jargon. Explain what those terms mean. Put it into context for your reader. Read it aloud. It's amazing how different something is when you read it out loud as opposed to when you're typing it and reading it on the screen.